Hello, Rogue Valley, and welcome back to A Focus On. I'm your host, Julia Babb, sitting here today with Trish Broersma, the board president and founder of Riding Beyond. Welcome back, Trish.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about your something you're very passionate about, horses as sentient beings. So welcome back. I'm really glad to see you back. Last time we mainly discussed how working with horses through your Riding Beyond program benefited the humans in the equation. Today we're going to shift focus toward the horses and how humans can kind of return the favor and be of benefit to our equine partners. I wonder if you'd start us off with just kind of the history of the relationship between horses and humans, and how did we evolve together, and how did we lose touch?
Well, it's a fascinating story, and we're just going to do just a couple of little brush strokes because there's evidence that it goes back 40,000 years now, and we probably know a lot of that, in terms of horses being our work partners for farming, for warfare, for transportation, and but more recently it's for recreation and sports. Yeah. And throughout all of that time there was a special relationship between people and horses that the cave drawings reveal that along with all the other wild animals, so to speak, the relationship with the horse was clearly different. And so they've really been partners in the human journey for many, many thousands of years. Personally, and I, along with many other people, see that they are emerging in a new role given the historical times that we're in. With global warming is calling us to attend to our environment in a way that we have not for maybe ever before. And there are many things about the horses that can assist us in that, which we'll go into here a little bit later. But the basic thing is that the shift now is that, again, they're assisting us primarily through the world of therapeutic horseback riding, but even within that industry, there is a shift to move from human-centric goals in terms of people benefiting for their special needs, their disabilities, to the horse-centric, and it's part of all animal welfare. Right. Growth and movement, the movement in our country, or really not just in our country, but around the world, that we need to move from being so human-centric to animal-centric, to see things from that perspective and honoring, their world, and really everyone benefiting. And Riding Beyond is set up with the idea that everyone benefits. Right. The horses benefit. The breast cancer survivors and thrivers benefit, the staff benefits, the volunteers, everyone benefits. And if it's not benefiting everyone, then it's not of benefit to anyone. Yeah. So that's part of our philosophy. Huh. That's great.
I'm curious about that term, though, sentient beings. How would you define sentient
Well, basically
beings?
Sentience has to do with the ability to have consciousness, to feel, to respond, to be empathetic, to care. And it's always kind of amazing to me that science is just now validating those qualities in animals. And but what that means in the world of horses is that we don't manipulate them, we don't use them as tools for our own purposes. We don't try to scare or tease them. And there's some traditions in our industry where, for instance, they might send a group of teenagers into a group of horses with a halter and tell them to go and halter the horse, but without any instruction in how to do that, in order to trigger a sense of, you know, anxiety or powerlessness on the behalf of the person so that they have something to talk about. But that is, you know, from my standpoint and others in my tradition, we see that as not modeling, you know, good relationships with the horses, and in general for other people. Like that's not respectful. No. Of course the horses are going to be confused, and they're basically being used as tools to create a therapeutic moment and, you know, opportunity for teaching for the people. And so that's a human-centric approach rather than a horse-centric, you see. Yeah. And so that's just one, there's a lot of activities like that that are just, that have been commonly engaged in without really seeing the larger picture. Yeah,
well, and I think it's, you know, humans aren't really all that willing to admit that other things may be intelligent in other ways than the human way of being intelligent, and we could be missing out on huge chunks of information. you know? So, but yeah, that's
they actually have a lot to teach us.
Oh yeah,
you know, that come from their birthright, and yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, what do horses have to teach us?
Well,
how to be better
I really
beings?
enjoyed exploring that over the last number of years as I've switched more into riding beyond and this other emphasis. And, you know, I mean, some of the, for instance, in order for horses to have survived for centuries, they have very heightened sensing of their environment. Their ears are always kind of checking out things. Their eyes are set on the side of their head, so they have a much broader range of vision. They actually just feel things through their skin, and just the slightest something noticed by one member of the herd will be telepathed through the entire herd, and they take off. So they have this very heightened sensing, and part of that, what that gives them is, and what that can give us, is to learn to be more attentive to the subtle things that are going on in our environment, you know, that we've often tuned out for a variety of reasons. They also are herd animals, and the way they cooperate and work together has a lot to teach us about being in community. You know, like it was interesting to hear a study where they witnessed something startling a herd of horses. The horses banded together and took off, and then they startle a group of chimpanzees or some kind of monkey breed, and they all scatter, because, you know, the humans tend to do that too, you know, and so you know, we can learn a lot about leadership and being in community with horses. And then you know, another one is that they have a quality of being able to take off and be alarmed and just, you know, flat out run, and then it's all over and fine, return to calm, and they're grazing 10 minutes later. Yeah. A lot of people need to learn that kind of emotional resilience, and what that means to respond fully and then relax, go back to calm, go back to zero. Yeah. They have a lot to teach us about that. They have a lot to teach us about coherence, which is has to do with being saying what you are feeling inside. A lot of people who are in psychotherapy that's associated with horses, they pretend to be, and many of us are this way, we pretend to be happy on the outside, but inside we're feeling sad or angry or something else. That's incoherence, okay? Horses pick up on that. They pick up, if they're around someone who is you know, the people around may not notice, but the horses do, and it makes them very uncomfortable. And so learning to be attuned to incoherent states allows us, first of all, to become more coherent within ourselves, and to learn to tune in to those kinds of subtleties with other people. It allows us to be more truth-telling with ourselves. It allows us to see the difference between our heart interactions and the ego-based interactions.
Yep.
And so because the horses are so super sensitive and responsive to that, you know, if they sense incoherence, they'll walk away from a person, and then, you know, you talk about it a little bit, you know, the person will say, oh, horse doesn't like me. Well, what does that feel like? What's going on inside? As soon as they admit to how they're truly feeling inside, they can be angry, they can be sad, they can, you know, it doesn't have to be happy. Then the horse turns right around and comes back instantly, and because they appreciate coherence.
Yes.
Okay, so another thing is the living with the large-heartedness that the horse has, which we talked about in the last show. You know, that they have this coherent heart rhythm that is infectious, you might say, that you spend that's part of the reason why so many people love to be around a horse, is that that sense of large-heartedness makes you feel good. And we can learn how to invoke that, you know. Now another piece is that because the horses have been a part of grand epic stories, then the horses have an archetypal power for us if we claim them as a companion. And we can they can help us move into you know, a larger story for our own selves by claiming their power, their beauty, their companionship on that level. So those are just some of the things. Oh, another one that's my favorite is that because horses don't have the verbal language, is that we can learn body language, the subtleties of what we can communicate and what we do communicate with body language, and they pick up on that right away. In fact, I've been experimenting with their teaching us body language, their body language, and it's just phenomenal, the kinds of conversations that can emerge between the human and the horse. And you know, what a great learning for working with people from other cultures. You know, and other ways of being.
I know I you know, have been out to work with Mystic and the group of volunteers, and I was trying to hang back and just kind of observe and just be around the sidelines and I didn't want to really get in there and mix it up, but as soon as you took the halter off and you said, okay, we're done, she just turned right around and came right for me. And it's like, oh, I can't hide here. You know, no, I can't hide here.
She said hi.
So in any case, and working off of that question, I'm wondering, how do we humans learn how to be different in our approach to working with horses as partners, as another intelligence, not just a tool of, you know, for our own purposes? What do we need to kind of change about ourselves, or how can we open up to working with horses better?
You know, it really needs to be under the guidance of someone who is experienced with horses, because they are large animals, and bonding comes first, you know, and building a connection of trust, and but once that's accomplished, we need to be able to step into leadership so that it's all safe. And a lot of people, they're real readily able to connect and trust a horse, but then when they ask the horse to do something that it doesn't want to do, like maybe get in the trailer to go to the vet or something like that, you know, the horse is saying, I don't think so, you know, and you suddenly discover that this bonding and trust is not everything that it needed to be. And so learning to express leadership is a huge piece for many people. It's actually part of corporate trainers bringing their teams into working with horses sometimes to help explore leadership and teamwork as well, you see.
Yeah, it's a tough thing for a lot of people to take on. So, I mean, the leadership aspect. I mean, I don't necessarily think of myself as a leader until I'm right in the middle of something and it's like obvious I'm running the game.
Here you are leading this conversation.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I didn't know this was going to happen. You know, I've heard you talk about something you call a stewardship approach, and I'm wondering what you mean by that, if you could explain a little bit about what that approach is.
Well, I mean, personally, I feel that in our times we're being called to be stewards of the earth, okay? And in my world, at least, that starts with enlisting the horse in being stewards of the horses, and together that we have the ability to basically open our eyes and source other resources within ourselves with that partnership of the horse. Because we can live a larger life with their, and really find creative resources within ourselves with this particular kind of partnership. And I think it's just a very important part of being citizens of our world. And so, you know, that horses can allow us to bring our whole being, you know, head, heart, and gut to this, because that's the coherence of the, you know, that we're able to access our creative, our creative solutions, and, you know, through our own body wisdom, which is so critical.
Yeah, and that definitely, horses are so massive. And I think two bodies have a gravitational pull, and you know, definitely there's a strong attraction, definitely. And we have a little extra time. If there's anything else that you wanted to bring up and that I didn't think of a good question before.
Well, I think what excites me is that there is a big movement in partnering with horses and learning their language, and it's truly it's really kind of feels almost miraculous when you take that step with horses. And I feel like many of the lessons that are learned with building that relationship with a horse are lessons that we need in our political situation, our country, the world, in terms of you know, finding heart-centered solutions. You know, I mean, we need to, obviously, we don't want to leave out the hard-headed details and analysis, and you know, our gut intuitions and the creativity that's necessary there. But finally, we've got to come back to heartful solutions that really embrace you know, all of life. That we're a part of a huge cosmic being, if you will. And once we start understanding that we're not just, you know, living here in this money and market story, that we're part of this living universe.
It's a process.
And that we're all in this together, you might say. Then that opens up so many, it just opens up so much more hope and possibility.
Yes, I'm so glad that my life has more value than to consume and you know, be entertained.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
And I think so many animals really enrich our lives. And I think a lot of people know that, but to me, it's like we're taking it to a new level here of exploring the critical importance of it for our future survival, really, as a planet. And so those are some of the things that excite me, and I see signs of it all the time. And when I'm, you know, I've been teaching equine professionals for a number of years, and when we first started teaching some of these principles, you know, people actually got up and walked down and said, "Oh, this is way too woo-woo," and, you know, "What are you talking about?" This was like 10 years ago.
Right.
And now, you know, first of all, the courses are almost always full with 20 people, and they're saying, "Yes, this is the way I am with my own horses. This is what we need in our profession. This is what our world needs." And so it's like, and there are young people coming in, lots of them.
Yep.
And so there is a huge shift in that's going on that we don't necessarily see in the media, but I see it.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so, yeah.
No, that's really excellent, and I'm really glad that you're bringing this up into our, you know, I'm blanking on a word that I'm trying to find, but into our just the way we think about these things. It is not. We do not have the corner market on intelligence or wisdom.
Right. Yep.
You know, I think you always share with me the advice, wisdom from Mystic, and you know.
Yeah, we have several of those different versions.
Yeah,
you know?
Mystic is quoting Goethe, whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic to it. But yes, and that I always pay attention because I don't, you know, I think really humans kind of do need to kind of humble down a little bit in terms of we're not the ones who have all the answers. You know,
right,
yeah.
And really, we don't have to. I mean, it's actually liberating to know that we're not in this just all on our own.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't recognize that this larger family of being, you know, and the implications of our caring or our lack of caring, then, you know, that's a pretty dim future. But here we are with so many opportunities available to us. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish everybody. I wish we still had access, like kind of on an everyday level to horses. I mean, I wish, you know, I would rather not have a bike or a car or a bus. I'd rather have a horse. I mean, I'm not that familiar with them, but it just seems like you can. You're probably happier on a horse.
You know, several years ago, someone who was presenting at a conference was saying that he and some of his colleagues had a vision that one day horses might be a part of each family's life in the way that dogs and cats are, you know, and just envisioning how that would be, how life would be so different. Yep. And he I was really kind of amazed because he was an academician, you know, and that he would be thinking in that direction. But it really kind of captured my imagination. Like, what would that look like? You know, how would life be different if we truly became less human-centric and became more animal-centric or global-centric and really honored the sentience of other beings. Yeah. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I think that's super important. It will be a challenge to look at squirrels differently, but horses absolutely. You know, I don't know about squirrels.
I don't know. I just saw a PBS show on the survival guide for squirrels, and they're actually pretty amazing.
I'm sure they're very smart. But no, you can't have my bagel. So, well, I know we've only scratched the surface here. This is, there's a lot more to know and a lot more to find out.
What has broad implications for the future? It's a trend that's happening.
Yes.
And yeah.
And so there's probably more information. I mean, like, God bless the internet, because, you know, it is, you know, bringing things that I would have never had access to 15 or 20 years ago. I just wouldn't have, you know, I wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have done anything equine assisted at all, because I wouldn't have known about it, you know.
Right,
so,
yeah. And fortunately there's a lot of research being gradually the last 15 years supported in terms of some of the benefits of working with horses that are very strong about equine welfare, like not putting too heavy a person on a horse. Instead of everybody gets to get up, even though they might be 250, 300 pounds, and fitting the equipment and truly looking at all these details about how they land. Like not just keeping horses in stalls, but they need opportunities to go out and practice seeking behavior that happens with grazing and so forth. But a lot of horses never get that, and so there's a lot of work being done in terms of the equine welfare work to really attend to that. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's definitely excellent, and I'm really sorry that we're out of time. Obviously, thank you so much for joining us. I hope we get to do this again. It was very, very beneficial for us to all understand this topic because you do hear a lot about anthropomorphism, and it's a very confusing, well, what does that mean? Am I doing it? Yeah, I'm definitely happy that you were able to join us.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to thank SOU for their support of RVTV, Rogue Valley Television, Community Television, and an extra special thank you to Wanda Borland and her all-volunteer crew for making today's program possible. Thanks for watching A Focus On. I'm your host, Julia Babb. See you next time.